Hello YouTube, welcome to the Indie Films channel, and this is our new series that we're starting out, which is a cooking series. This series is called Shirish's Kitchen. I am Shirish and I will be sharing various different types of recipes with you, and today I'm going to make some pork kebab. Alright, so now that we've looked at all the ingredients, as you must have noticed, in the ingredients I've said that I'll have 1.5 kilos, so 1.5 kilos of pork. What I have over here is only 750 grams, so half of that, because the other half I've actually already marinated and kept aside. So I'll just be mixing this with the one that we're going to do together over here, because I just did it recently, but I will do half of that with you over here and show you how it is done. So the first thing we need to do is get the meat. So the pork, you can get various different types of pork. Now I like to usually have less fat in the meat as much as possible, because no matter how much less fat you go for, pork especially still has a bit of fat, and most red meats have, and that is going to be plenty because you will need to add a little bit of oil when marinating and cooking, so you don't want it to be too greasy either. So that's why I got these pork chops. Now if you get diced pork at the butcher's or at your supermarket, you could get that. Otherwise I got these chops which are pretty lean and nice. I just need to dice them up into smaller pieces, so that is what I'll do first. So let me get started with that. So I'll get my chopping board over here, and I'll get a mixing bowl. So I'll be cutting my meat and putting it in the mixing bowl over here. Now you want to make it into dices, so probably around 1 inch by inch kind of thing. You can make it slightly smaller, but a bit chunky pieces usually go well with this dish, but don't try and make them too big either, because otherwise it might not marinate very well. So something like this size is pretty good. So now we have our pork diced over here, and it looks really nice, nice pieces. Now I'm going to start to add the spices and all the ingredients so that we can leave it to marinate. So the first thing we obviously need is the salt. So how much salt really depends on your taste. For this 750 grams, I'm going to be using let's say around 1.5 teaspoons, 1 to 1.5 teaspoons. It really depends on your taste, so kind of it's hard to tell for the salt. Now apart from salt, there are other things that you require which were there in the ingredients list. The first thing is turmeric. Now turmeric, or in Australia it's commonly called turmeric, it's very common in Nepalese style cooking. It's something that is very healthy as well, and it's become kind of a fad now. So we use this a lot in Nepalese style cooking. Turmeric powder, if you don't get it in your supermarket, I'm sure you can get it in like an Indian grocery store or something like that near your place. This one is homemade though, so it's really good. So it's really good to try and see where you can get the best spices in your town, and get the best spices, because they make a lot of difference. So for this 750 grams of pork, I'm going to put about 2/3 of the teaspoon of turmeric. The next thing we need is cumin and coriander powder. Now because cumin and coriander powder is also quite a bit used in Nepalese style cooking, I usually have them pre-mixed, half and half. You can have them separately and use them as well, so it really doesn't matter. Now the half and half mix of cumin and coriander powder, I'm going to put around close to 1 teaspoon for 750 grams of pork that I have over here. Now the next thing that we're going to require is ginger. Ginger is one of the major ingredients of this style, kebab style slow cooked meat. So I've got this, let's say around 1 inch by slightly less than 1 inch block over here. You might probably want a bit more than that, probably like 1.5 times of this if you don't have dried ginger powder, which I'm going to use as well. First let me put this in. Now you can press it in a press, or like if you have a mortar and pestle or on your chopping board. I usually like to use a grater, so it kind of nicely grates it and makes it close to a paste. Alright, so now that I've put the ginger over here, the next thing that I'm going to put is some ginger powder. Now, you don't need to put ginger powder, you can just use fresh ginger. I usually do half and half because fresh ginger kind of gives that really nice smell of ginger. But the dried ginger, dried powdered ginger is good because it's kind of powdery, so it kind of goes around and nicely sits on the surface of the meat when we marinate it. So I like to use both little. So because I use about a chunk of ginger, I'll just use about half a teaspoon of ginger powder over here. If you don't have ginger powder, then you can just use fresh ginger. This ginger powder is homemade. My mom made it for me in Nepal. If she doesn't come to Australia by the time I finish this again, I probably will make it myself this time. All you need to do is just slice your ginger into very thin slices, dry it in the sun, and then just powder it up in your grinder. So that's that. Now, a couple of things remaining. One is this masala over here. Now the masala over here, this is a mix of half and half cardamom and cinnamon powder. So I will be putting a little bit of cardamom and cinnamon later on when cooking, but while marinating it's really handy to have the powder. But you don't want to put too much of this because this is really overpowering. So just about the tip of your teaspoon, so let's say about 1/3 or even just 1/4 of your teaspoon, just to give it a little bit of nice smell of cinnamon and cardamom. Now the last thing I want to do is put some pepper. Now you can put already ground pepper that you get in the market, but I usually grind my own pepper using this grinder. Freshly ground pepper is really nice, it gives a better smell. You can add some chili powder in it if you like your food hot. Nepalese style cooking is sometimes a little bit hot, but in my family no one used to eat hot food, so I was kind of trained that way, so I really don't like hot food at all. If I have to make it a little hot, I usually like the pepper hot than the chili hot. So I'm just going to add a little bit of pepper. So chili is optional, so if you want to use chili. Now once everything is done, the last thing we need is a little bit of oil. So I got just plain vegetable oil over here. Now you can use other types of oil, but vegetable oil is probably just the best. But you don't want to put too much oil. Like I said, there's already a bit of fat in the meat which will come out when it's cooked. And you don't want the final dish to be really greasy as well. So just a little bit, probably around like 2 to 3 tablespoons of oil is what I'm putting over here. It just helps. So it just helps all these spices just bind a little bit together with the meat when it's marinating. So now that I've got this, all I need to do is mix. Now remember that this is only 750 grams of pork, so whatever I put over here is for 750 grams of pork. This is probably the minimum amount you want to make because usually slow cookers are quite big. That is why I wanted to make 1.5 kilos. So I already made the 750 gram marinated over here, and this is the second marination. So before I just mix this up, I thought I'll just quickly open this, the one I did in the past, and toss it in all together, and then all I need to do is just mix the whole thing up now. So very gently just toss it around, make sure the spices are reaching everywhere, your meat is nicely tossed up in the spices and the oil mixture. As you can see, it gives a very nice yellowish type of color, and after you do this we need to just let it sit to marinate. Alright, so that's all ready to be marinated. It'll just sit and get marinated nicely so that the meat gets taste of all the spices that we put. Just covered with a small plate or cling wrap or something. How long do you want to marinate it? Really depends. The minimum probably would be around 2 hours. 3 to 4 hours would be ideal. Sometimes I even leave it overnight because I just marinate it in the night and leave it and then put it in the cooker in the morning. So it's really up to you. 3 to 4 hours is what is recommended. Now I'll just put this in my fridge, and then I'll see you in about 3 to 4 hours, and we will put it in our cooker. Alright, so welcome back, and now our pork should be marinated. So I've left it marinated for around 3.5 hours. So it looks good to me. It should have nicely, the spices should have nicely gone into the meat, and now it's ready to be cooked. So that's the mix that we need to cook. And I got 3 things over here. So I've got some cardamom over here, just 4 small size, medium size cardamom, just 4 cloves, and just 2 small sticks of cinnamon. You don't want to put too much of these spices either, because then they'll overpower the taste of the ginger and everything else over there. So we will put this in the slow cooker to cook. Now this here is the slow cooker that I have. Now this is not an expensive thing to buy these days. I bought this from Kmart for around 35 bucks, I think, and you can always look for something that's on offer. So it's a cheap one, and it works well. You really don't need to get an expensive one if you don't use it too often. Especially slow cooker is really awesome to cook red meat, or various different types of things, but with red meat it really works well. Slow cooked red meat. I've cooked lamb a few times on the bone, and it just is what they call falling off the bone, so it's really good. Now, so this is an electric slow cooker, and now with this, the actual vessel that goes in is made out of ceramic, so I think that helps in retaining the heat, but letting it go slowly, because ceramic is an insulator. So yeah. Now, before I show you how I will start this, what if you do not have a slow cooker? So the traditional way anyway is to cook in a big vessel. So you can have a big vessel that your meat will fit in. Something even bigger than this is probably good for the amount of 1.5 kilos pork mix that we have over here. Now this is probably the biggest thing I had. It's actually an Indian style pressure cooker, but you don't have to use it as a pressure cooker, you can just use it as a vessel. So you just put it and then put it on the stove. Right in the beginning you can even have it really hot, and then once it's quite hot then you can put the marinated mix, and then you usually want to put the heat to like low or very close to low, and then cover it up with this. Now with the concept of slow cooking, what you want to do is you really don't want to add water in it. Even if you do, it's usually just a little bit of sprinkles here and there. You don't want to add too much water. The concept is that you let it cook in its own water. So what happens when you're not using a slow cooker, which is designed to cook slowly, is because the meat is getting cooked, the water will come and then it'll vaporize, and then it'll come and start to condense over here. So the condensation process, you want to help it. So every half an hour or so you want to get some cold water. It doesn't have to be fridge cold, but cold water running out of the tap, and just put a little bit of water here, not too much, just a little bit. So that cold water, well, it will get warm slowly and probably even evaporate, but that cold water, when you put it over here, what happens is it helps the vapor that's condensing over here to condense faster, and the water will drip off down again, and it will again retain that water and slowly start to cook in the same water. So that is if you do not have a slow cooker. But we have our slow cooker here. That is the best option for us. So in slow cooker you really don't have to do anything. Like I said, we already added some oil when we marinated. The meat has its own fat as well. So I will just take this and just simply put it over here. But before that, these few spices, might as well just put it on the bottom. And then I will just take this, use a spatula, and the marinated meat, I will just put it in the cooker. And whatever oil is over here, you might as well try and mop that up instead of adding any more. If you really need to add oil, if you think it's really dry and you did not add enough oil before, you can always add up a little bit later. So nicely spread the meat out in the slow cooker. And now I'll probably add just a little bit of oil because I thought it was just slightly dry, and just get a little bit of water and just sprinkle it. So like I said, you don't want too much water, so probably that's the only amount of water that will be adding up, just to give it a little bit more water over there apart from what's there in the meat already. So that's ready to be cooked now. All we need to do is just cover it up, and now I will connect it to the mains over here. Now the electricity is flowing. Now there are 3 settings over here: high, low or auto. Now low is something you want to use especially if you are cooking something that has got lots of water in it, so soupy stuff, and if you're really leaving it overnight, or if you're going to work or something for 8 to 10 hours and then you want to put something to cook and then you want to leave it for that long, then low is good. For this I'll actually put it on high. There's also an auto which I usually don't like to use. I'll put it on high. So that's it, it's just started. Let's put it on high. Now it'll start to slowly cook. Once it starts to cook up a little bit, the water starts to come out a little bit. First thing I want to do is I want to wait for about an hour, and then just after an hour just use my spatula to quickly mix it up, turn it up, and then we'll again leave it. So probably it'll take around 3 hours to cook. In about an hour I'll be coming back to just give it a bit of a stir and see how it is going, and we'll see how it goes from there. Alright folks, it's been an hour, close to an hour, that we have been cooking our pork over here. So let's see how it looks. Now I'm going to open this lid. Now when you're cooking in a slow cooker, you want to make sure that you don't keep on opening the lid all the time. And when we do open, whatever water has been condensing over here, we want to make sure we let it drip inside and not outside, and don't lose that moisture that's already in there. So for that I'll just hold the cover right over here. So as you can see over here, it's starting to cook, and we can see the nice yellowish color over here, which is coming from our spices, mainly the turmeric. So what we'll do is, we can also see that there is a little bit of water that's come, so we want to make sure that water is all cooked through. So we'll just give it a quick stir so that the whole thing gets stirred nicely. So this is the first time I'm opening and stirring after 1 hour of cooking, and probably we will need another couple of hours before this thing is fully cooked. So once you give it a nice stir, just cover it back again, and we'll wait for another hour before seeing how it goes. Alright folks, so it's just been 3 hours and 10 minutes, approximately 3 hours and 10 minutes, and looks like our pork is all cooked now. So let's look at how it's come up. I just turned the slow cooker off and unplugged it, so it will be a bit hot, so just be careful. So as you can see, it's nicely cooked, so most of the water has evaporated. So as at the moment when you look at this, you can see that there is a bit more what looks like water, but that is actually a bit of oil and fat which is going to be there. So if you're going to store this in the fridge, that will block up, so you'll just take it out, heat it, and it'll like melt. With that, you can see that there are all the spices over there, which are also good. But let's look at the pork. So if I just take a small piece out over here, and if I will just gently try and break it off, as you can see, it nicely breaks. It's got that lovely texture to it, just falling off the bones. So let's see how it tastes. Just going to eat this small piece. This is really good. It just melted in my mouth. It's so good, and it's really soft. That is simply beautiful. So again, this time again the pork has come really well. I'm thinking it's actually come off much better than how it came last time. So what I want to do now is just put it on a plate, just a little bit. Now you can eat this with rice or with Indian style bread like the roti if you want. It goes really well with rice and Indian style lentils, which is the dal, or some sort of like fried rice, or the pulao rice that is made in India and Nepal, which is a bit of dried style fried kind of rice. So you can eat with all these sorts of things. And one more thing that you can eat this pork with is having a beer in the evening, or with a glass of wine. It really goes well as a good snack. So that is how it looks on the plate. I have not been very neat over here, so if you're presenting it to someone, might as well try and clean off the sides so it looks nice and presentable. And finally, what we probably want to do is put just a bit of garnish. Coriander, fresh coriander itself does not go in with the meat when you cook it or at the end, but just a little bit on top to garnish it would look beautiful. Nepalese style cooking usually uses quite a bit of coriander. So there we go, that's the dish. Nepalese style kawaf meat with pork meat, so that's a bit of twist. So pork kawaf.